welcome to Murder Dictionary Podcast. My name is Brianna, and that is Kelly.
Hey.
Before we get started, we just wanted to remind you, as always, of a few things. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter if you wanted to see some memes and serial killer info, general weirdness, and information about episodes. You know, all the good shit.
Cool drawings.
Yes.
Art.
I like to post a lot of art. I don't know. I really like serial killer art.
Well, you're cultured, so.
That's me. I'm fancy. No big deal. If you also want to see timestamps for the parts of the story that are gruesome, we always include those in the show notes, so you can skip those parts if you want to. We also put in the show notes links to resources and research material that we use for each episode, as well as links to resources for victims and mental health resources. Mm-hmm. So we've got like CPS links, 12-step meeting links.
Domestic violence.
Yep. Bunch of different stuff. So lastly, before we get to our story, we also wanted to say that there are links to our Patreon and our thread list so you can get merch and bonus episodes and all that sort of stuff. We wanted to thank a couple new supporters for Patreon this week. We've got, are you going to take notes? It looked for a second like you were going to take notes. I'm like, you can always do it from memory. You know?
I'm so smart. Thank you. Thank you so much. I was actually looking at these really cool, what are these called?
Magnetos.
Thank you. Magnetos.
Yeah, I have some magnets that I am going to send out to Patreon supporters that have been on our Patreon for a while. So, you know, as people support us for longer, it's not just one initial dose of,
you get
of
gifts
merch.
For
We're going to try and come out with, you know, every 6 months or so, a different little merch item. So I'm going to send a few surprise items. The surprises magnets.
Don't ruin it.
I'm really bad at surprises. So the new Patreon supporters for this week are Jess, Michelle, Robin, Kate, and Alyssa. And we also have a couple people that increased their pledge. So we wanted to say thank you to Nicole and Diane.
Jess, Michelle, Robin, Kate, Nicole, Alyssa, somewhere, I don't know.
Diane.
Princess Diane. No.
So thank you so much for supporting us on Patreon.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Yeah. And I think that's pretty much it. We can get into our story.
Yes.
It's super windy outside. I feel like there's some good ambiance for some crime, right?
Crime happens in windy weather.
I always feel like someone's chasing me when it's windy outside. Does that happen to you? Don't look at me like that. I just don't like walking the dog when it's windy. It's fucking creepy and scary. The dog even looks around like there's something chasing us. I swear.
Both are too paranoid for your own fucking good.
Oh my God. I have such bad anxiety.
I'm just more caught up with my hair. It's always in my mouth. It's like,
yes.
So I'm I'm gagging
not
too
even
much
thinking about being chased.
Yeah. I hope someone's chasing me so they get the fucking hair out of my mouth.
Yeah, I just feel like I'm starring in a horror movie every time it's windy. It's not windy that often here. I mean, we have like pretty awesome weather.
Yeah, and then when we do, it starts fires.
Right, yes.
But
everything falls apart. Like, it's the apocalypse whenever there's weather in LA.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you ready for Vice Part 2?
This is honestly, next to the rock and roll music, this is
so
some of my...
good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is good. So I am ready.
Yeah, so more Vice crimes. So this week we have another Vice story. So again, Vice is just going to be anything that is kind of a moral crime. So we're looking at any crimes that are related to gambling, prostitution, drugs, that kind of stuff, and any murders that are associated with those types of crimes. Cool?
They're the coolest, yes.
So Vice Part 2. Ooh. So good. This is the story of Jim and Artie Mitchell. So we've got some brothers and some Vice.
I'm so turned on. Let's do it.
So Jim and Artie Mitchell grew up in the suburbs of Northern California. The older brother, Jim, was born November 30th in 1943 in Stockton. Beautiful Stockton,
Gross.
California.
My aunt lives there, actually. She lives in like the one nice place. Shit's cracking off in Stockton,
yeah,
dude.
It's pretty gnarly in Stockton nowadays. And the baby brother, Artie, was born 2 years later on December 17th in 1945 in Lodi, California.
Even better.
Isn't that where the jail is, or am I tripping?
Probably. It's all California's jails and prisons.
Pretty much. You could say that about any town, really. So it just seems, November and December, they're both born at the same time of the year. So their parents pretty much only fuck in 1 month a year, or what?
Pretty much, yeah. You don't do all your fucking in 1 month?
I really bang it out at once, and the next 11 months just bang free zone.
I'm a spring fucker.
Spring banger.
Yeah, spring banger.
So the Mitchell's father, Robert, also known as Bob, was a professional poker player. And of course, since gambling isn't exactly a stable income for a family man, it's not a steady profession. There were some times in the boys' childhood where money was really scarce and their parents' stress was high. And of course, they sometimes had some fights about money and stuff like that. Eventually, their home life became more stable when their father settled into Antioch, California, near San Francisco, and got stable employment. The brothers say that overall, their father, Robert, and mother, Georgia May, were really great parents, and they had a really great childhood. Their parents provided a relatively stable home life and were always extremely supportive of Art and Jimmy. Artie was the more adventurous and extroverted brother. He was really rebellious, he was headstrong, had this kind of tendency to go over the top and joke around a lot. People recall that Artie was always kind of doing what he wanted. He just followed, his instincts. And no matter what, even if it meant that he would get in trouble or if it was kind of against the rules, he would still do it. One funny story that the family tells was that one day he walked home from elementary school for lunch because he didn't like what the school cafeteria was serving. I wish I had the balls to do that. I don't want chalupas.
You don't? Whoa. Who the fuck let him out, though?
I know. It was like the Wild West back in, the 50s.
Oh, yeah. Probably no gates.
There really probably wasn't gates. It was just like, oh, whatever. The kids will make it.
Yeah,
They're
and
fine.
you could walk home safely from school.
Yeah. Or at least that's what people thought.
Yeah.
That's why so many people disappeared. So his older brother, Jim, was, of course, the complete opposite. Jim was really quiet. He was introverted. He was a planner. He was very careful with things, And Jim took after his mother. He was more serious and responsible. And of course, he was protective of his brother. Even though they were extremely different, the brothers were inseparable, like twins, their entire life. The Mitchell brothers were popular, and they had a really close group of childhood friends. And these childhood friends would actually remain a part of their lives for a long time and eventually go into business with them. After finishing high school in the early 60s, Jim went to film school, and Artie enlisted in the Army. While Jim was attending film school at San Francisco State, he really had these dreams that were pretty big ambitions of becoming an extremely influential director. He really wanted to be like the next Francis Ford Coppola or Roman Polanski or something like that. While in school, though, he got a job at the Follies, which was a cinema showing kind of like little nudie films.
Yes.
So even though he had these high art dreams, he essentially made money doing just kind of porn theater work, The theater that he worked at showed these little movies where naked ladies kind of danced around and did burlesque, pretty much. It wasn't necessarily pornography the way that we think of it today.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was definitely porn.
It's like their version of DP.
Yes.
Okay.
It was like there's full tit, like you can see an entire nipple. So it's the same as, deep throating today. So one article said, Jim observed that each night the theater was filled with, quote, horn dick daddies. Which were people that, came just to see the on-screen nudity, and they would masturbate in the crowd.
Isn't that what you're supposed to do at a fucking
Duh. That's
what do you
like
just eat popcorn? Just drink your Slurpee?
Who can eat popcorn at a time like this? I mean, you just use the popcorn to get your hand all greasy for the dick,
you
right?
Put the hole
That's
in the
how
bag
it works.
and yeah.
I've seen those cartoons, right? Yeah.
And then you shove your own face into the popcorn when you come so you can catch it. Right?
You sit on your hand for a while and pretend it's someone else's hand. Yeah.
You sit on your foot and then do the same thing with the numb. You take the numb foot and the numb hand and you just jerk it. That's crazy that people were really just getting off to a naked lady, like just barely,
just kind of wiggling.
Kind of creeps me out. I'd rather see you get off to DP because that makes more sense to me.
I
like
totally get that. Yes, it's just like you're kind of creepy if you're like seriously jerking it to just someone semi wiggling.
Yeah,
with like some feathers in front of her body.
Yeah,
that's way more creepy to me.
Just like when people get
then
off,
it's like a very little step to just waiting outside someone's window and watching them and jerking off,
like tickling people. Like people that get off on tickling freak me out more than people that want to do anal all the time.
So creepy. Exactly. So to earn a little bit extra money, Jim would find local women who were willing to pose topless for photos in exchange for $10.
I need $10.
We all need $10. And I have titties. Jim sold the topless pictures to local pornographers that he had made contacts with in order to turn a profit. After he made some consistent money with the still pictures, he decided to incorporate his filmmaking skills and started making 3-minute like XXX films in order to sell them to the local peep show places. So using a 16mm camera, Jim produced 11-minute softcore loops, earning a legendary $6 for his very first movie.
Big money. $6.
I mean, that's like a good $12 now.
And the girl made nothing.
Right, exactly.
She still made $10. Actually, she's winning.
She earned like a let's just be friends talk afterwards. That's probably what happened. Ay. So even though Jim's first film clips were not really lucrative, he was able to start turning a profit once he had a few more movies under his belt. So he focused more on, a quantity and then making money for each individual one.
So you got to focus on content, okay?
That's the key. They'll learn that later on. They will. With his experience at the theater and the short films, Jim began thinking that pornography would be an extremely lucrative career path. Artie was discharged from the army around this time, and Jim decided that him and his brother should start a porn theater of their own. So in 1969, the Mitchell brothers bought a dilapidated 2-story building at 895 O'Farrell Street in San Francisco. They renovated the property and began converting it into a movie theater with a small film studio upstairs so they could shoot movies and then show them at the theater. Unlike many other local theaters that were adult theaters at the time that were very dingy and gross and maybe didn't have a great reputation, the brothers decided that their establishment would be more high class, more fancy, have better accommodations. So they put really amazing seats in the theater. They made them ornate so it looked pretty inside. They made it be something that people wanted to spend time at.
Yeah. So inside the cup holder, it's just a tissue box, right?
Exactly. Super
lotion
fancy.
In the other one.
All the bells and whistles of jerking off. So they also rented a larger facility that was close to the theater to shoot some of their bigger productions because they did learn from their first experiences that they really wanted to make bigger movies and have it be more like adult features,
So we need to remake Casablanca a la porn.
Casa boobies. So even though Jim really once had these high aspirations of making these, lofty films, now he was kind of admitting that the best route for him to go was to make adult movies and just make a bunch of money. So Jim used to joke that the only art in porn is my brother. On July 4th, 1969, the brothers officially opened their soon-to-be-famous O'Farrell Street Theater. Hunter S. Thompson called the O'Farrell Theater the Carnegie Hall of public sex in America.
So you know it's good. Jesus.
Yeah. High praise. That's high praise. Employees spoke highly of their experience working there. The women that worked for the Mitchell brothers said it was really fun to work at a more classy place like the O'Farrell. Although the women liked working at the nice new theater, it was always a really chaotic dynamic at the business. It was a pretty chaotic work environment for them. First of all, the brothers fought often and viciously. They were completely inseparable, but they drove each other fucking crazy.
Probably why.
Yeah. Spend too much time together. Just take a break, dude.
Yeah. Take a weekend off.
Right? So the brothers also made some pretty poor decisions with staffing their business. They chose to hire a lot of their childhood friends who were not only underqualified for their jobs, but they were also way more focused on just partying around the theater than actually getting their work done. So instead of doing their jobs, most employees spent their time drinking, getting high, playing pool, or fucking.
Are they still hiring by any chance? Because I'm looking for a job.
It's still there. I mean, really, we could just go to San Francisco.
Is it really still there?
I think so.
Fuck yeah.
While the business was doing pretty well, despite some of their internal challenges, the biggest issue that the Mitchell brothers faced was constant issues with the police. Within days of opening the O'Farrell Theater, it was raided. The theater would continue to be the focus of many Vice Squad raids, undercover busts, and sting operations for decades. Although they had trouble with the law immediately, the business was just as lucrative as Jim suspected it would be. Many local adult businesses who had faced similar police interference had backed down whenever they were, raided or whenever the cops showed up. So they didn't want to fight the legal issues and pour money into it. They would just shut down, However, the Mitchell brothers chose to fight the charges against them and try and keep their doors open. Jim and Artie insisted that consenting adults had rights to provide XXX entertainment and that they refused to be censored.
It's in the Constitution. You have the right to jerk off near your fellow Americans.
That's exactly what it says. The San Francisco Vice Squad raided the O'Farrell Theater over and over dozens of times. Over the decades, the Mitchells and their employees had over 200 cases against them, but they kept lawyers on retainer and they fought every charge.
Lawyer up. That's all you gotta do, man.
Yep. Through all the legal trouble, the Mitchell brothers managed to keep their theater open and even open a couple different additional locations. But they always had to spend most of their profit on fighting these charges. On the flip side, despite all the taxpayers' money that was being poured into shutting down the O'Farrell Theater, the DA couldn't ever really get a conviction against them, even though there was numerous charges. The upside was that the city was never able to completely shut them down or send the brothers to jail. The downside was that the Mitchell brothers were barely breaking even, since most of their profits were basically sunk into legal fees.
But at least the people could jerk. The jerking continued.
In 1972, Jim and Artie decided to make an attempt to increase their income by making a feature-length adult film. It was a really huge gamble for them because it, of course, was really costly to make a big-budget movie, but they pulled out all the stops to get the same production value as a Hollywood film.
Night of the Living Head. No.
Yes. It's perfect.
I'm gonna come up with more names.
They spent $60,000 to make a feature porn called Behind the Green Door.
Oh, we know that one with
Yep.
What's her name?
Marilyn Chambers.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
I was coming up with Meryl Streep in my head. I was like, that's not it.
Nope.
That would be good though.
I'd watch that for sure. So it was $60K to make, but it would bring in over $350K in 1970. Oh, sorry. Whoa. Let me back up. that would be like $60K in 72 would be $350K basically.
Holy
that was
shit.
a conversion issue.
That's a lot for a porno, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Because I see them in hotel rooms sometimes where I'm like, that's $60
That was
to
$5,
make. Yeah.
right?
Plus the girl, it's $110 overall.
At the time, porn was very cheap and gritty looking, and it was really virtually unheard of to do what the Mitchells were trying to accomplish with the quality and the budget of this movie. Just before the film was due for release, the Mitchells got a call from the movie's star, Marilyn Chambers, and she informed them that she had done a job for Ivory Soap around the time that they filmed Green Door. And she had just found out that she was going to be on the new Ivory Soap box. So the release of the movie got a ton of publicity because the media freaked out about the scandal that this like squeaky clean face of Ivory Soap was also going to be a porn star.
Need to wash away your sins?
Yeah,
Ivory
exactly.
Soap.
Really, you should use this to your advantage.
Yeah, they can
Marketing,
help each other.
Man, it's the basics. So the publicity, of course, made The Green Door a box office hit. The risk they took paid off, and the movie ended up grossing $25 million.
Holy shit.
Yes. At the time the movie came out, Jim and Artie were making ends meet, but of course they were having a lot of money troubles, and their profit was never stable because it was tied up in legal fees. After the success of Behind the Green Door, Jim and Artie became rich enough to fight off the prosecutions that had previously been tying up all their money. After a few more wins in the courts, the Mitchell brothers were able to run their business with very little interference with the law. Jim and Artie, of course, parlayed the success of The Green Door into more movies, and they opened more storefront locations as well. They made The Resurrection of Eve in 1973, Sodom and Gomorrah in 1975.
So Bible fucking themed.
CB Mamas in 1976.
CB Mamas?
Yeah, I don't understand.
Cock and Balls Mamas?
It sounds like it. It must be. That
Charlie
must
Brown
be what
Mamas.
they meant. The autobiography of a flea, which doesn't sound sexy
That's
at all.
Porn. That's no.
Never a Tender Moment in 1979.
That's couple stuff. I don't.
Yeah, no, boo. Lots of fires in the background. And Beyond Assad in 1979.
Beyond Assad?
Yep.
Cool. That sounds cool. I like that one.
Yeah, like Marquis de Sade.
Yeah.
One of their last big budget feature movies was The Grafenberg Spot in 1985.
G-Spot. Sorry.
Yeah. Featuring Tracy Lords.
Oh, that sweet, sweet, sweet Tracy Lords.
So this movie also garnered a ton of publicity due to the fact that Tracy Lords had used a fake ID to make her way into the adult industry. And she was actually underage at the time of the filming.
So this is one of the movies. Okay.
This was the movie, yeah.
This was okay. Yes. Dude, I feel like I have a lot to do when I get home. I have so much watching. We have Behind the Green Door at work.
Yeah.
Man, we should just do like a porn, like Debbie Does Dallas and what's the other one with the snake? Devil and Miss Jones.
Yes.
Not that I know anything about porn. That's crazy though.
Yeah. So the Mitchell brothers were also one of the first porn companies to transfer film titles to videotape and sell them to consumers using ads in porn magazines. And of course, at this time, most people were consuming porn out in basically public through these theaters. That was really the only access people had. So the Mitchell brothers were really instrumental in transitioning to home porn viewing, basically. Because before it was just magazines and theaters and that's it.
Do you notice that both the V stories you've done have included trailblazers or like starters of their like gambling and like the hotel business? And these guys are all top dogs and they're into some shit.
I know, right?
Crazy.
Good stories.
Yeah, I love it.
Later, the brothers were inducted into the AVN Hall of Fame for their work in the early developments of the adult industry. As their wealth expanded, they reinvested into their own business by opening a total of 11 adult locations, in addition to their countless movie releases. Their net worth was estimated at $50 million. And that was in the early 80s.
Oh, damn.
So it's just, endless pretty much. But in the 80s, the Mitchells couldn't escape the conservative right-wing takeover that swept through the U.S. The liberal mayor, George Moscone, was shot, and he was replaced with Dianne Feinstein, who was very involved in the crackdown on adult activities. Your face. Boo.
Ew.
So she pushed her vice squad to do undercover operations and raids on all the local sex workers and adult businesses.
How scared would you be if you're you're jerking off furiously in the thing, and then someone's like, the guy next to you that's pretending to jerk off is like, breathe, and you're like, hold on,
just give me 1 second.
Yeah, that's fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
I'd be scarred.
I know, right?
I would never jerk off again.
That would be so much dick trauma.
My dick's going through therapy. Taking a while, but we're on good medication and hope to be back soon.
I'm just making my wife wear a cop hat. It's the only way I can get off now.
Maybe that's where the fetish came from.
Possibly.
Role playing.
Trailblazers. So after years of not having to deal with the cops, the law enforcement finally cracked down on them around this time. And the Vice Squad showed up to raid the O'Farrell Theater on July 9th, 1980. 15 cops arrested 14 customers, 6 performers, and 7 employees. Among the customers arrested were 2 men in their 70s.
Aww.
I don't know, something about that's so sad to me. That's somebody's grandpa that finally was able to just jerk off, after just hoping one day he would see a titty or something.
Yeah, I mean, we should be happy that he even got it up.
I know, right? I'm just proud of you, Cheepaw.
I would love that phone call of my grandpa in jail.
Oh, God.
What are you in there for, Gramps? Oh, public masturbation? Sick.
Oh, so it still works, eh?
So proud.
Good job.
My grandpa gets it up.
I'm telling all my friends. Yeah, it still works. There's hope for us.
This is pre-Viagra, so this is a big
deal. I know,
deal.
Right? This was not a medical miracle. This was just science,
and sheer
biology.
Oh.
Yeah. Just rebellion. It was the resistance. So they seized a .45 caliber submachine gun, 2 rifles, a sawed-off shotgun, 2 pistols, a leather sap, and...
Whoa. What?
I had to look it up. I said it because I thought maybe you would know.
No, what's a sap?
It's basically like lead-filled self-defense devices. It's kind of the same as putting quarters in a sock or bars of soap. That's what it's like. It's a leather sap. So it's like the handle, and then in the end is something heavy, and then you could just hit someone with it. They also make gloves. So they had during the raid they found sap gloves, which is basically like lead-lined gloves, similar to brass knuckles,
Oh, shit.
So you can punch and not really have any damage to your hand.
Who are they afraid of? Can you tell me?
I know.
Is that just all the coke making
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
It makes you super paranoid, right?
Yes.
Or people have told me.
Not that I know from experience. Definitely not the reason why I'm so sniffly right now.
Yeah. No, it's really not.
So they also seized $3,000 in cash, a bag of marijuana, and an unidentified white powdery substance, which subsequently disappeared from the police evidence room before it was able to be identified.
Of course it was. Ajax, right?
I feel like nowadays I see on reality TV, of course, the cops have the test kits.
Oh yeah, where it turns
for substances like in the field. I'm wondering if that's because things would just disappear.
Wait, what? What? Oh, you mean so they can bag it up right then, or
so they
what?
can figure out what it is. Because if there was just a powdery substance and then it disappears, and then you never were able to charge them with it,
it could have been
because another cop took it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it was a bag of flour, Jim. We figured it out.
Right?
So.
Like, how many cases did they lose because another cop just stole it from evidence?
I want to be a cop.
I'm just figuring that's got to happen a lot, you know? I don't know.
Remember the good old days when you could be a cop and just beat people up and steal stuff?
Right?
Oh, wait, that's
take
still now.
all the drugs.
Yeah.
The good old days like last week.
Yeah. You get
yesterday.
paid by the mob. Yeah.
The crowning achievement for the Vice Squad was on February 2nd, 1985, when Marilyn Chambers herself was arrested.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
I like that the coke went missing, but they charged him for the weed.
Right?
That's fucked up.
We're still going to get you. Even though we stole your drugs, we're still going to charge you.
Weed is bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on February 1st, 1985, Marilyn Chambers went on stage at the O'Farrell Theater and sang 2 country western songs. But as one might expect, she also did a little bit more in her performance. So 24 officers raided the midnight show and arrested her for, quote, prostitution. The cops' version, sorry.
No, I was going to say, can you prostitute yourself to yourself?
Isn't that called exactly what was going on, man. So their version of what happened at the theater was, quote, sexual contact with 20 men. But Marilyn Chambers explained that these were people that were fans for years, and it was kind of a thrill for them to finally be able to see a live show with her. So she was performing for them,
if you hit them in the head with ping pong balls, does that count?
It is sexual contact if your fluids are on the ping pong balls. I'm just saying.
Just 20 ping pong balls. Poop, poop, poop.
So Marilyn got released on bail several hours later after the police made a whole line trying to get her autograph, of course. The police claimed that Marilyn's act included digital penetration of the orifices and fondling of the breasts or nipples.
Digital penetration in the I don't understand.
It was basically the equivalent of, what goes on at strip clubs. It was just dancing.
Okay.
She was touching herself, but really it wasn't prostitution, It was crazy.
What if I was like, I'm just super scratchy on my vagina? Like, I was just itching repeatedly, and then I came. I don't know.
What if you needed a homie to help you out with that, and they were itching you as well?
And then they had something. There was a bug on their dick.
And then everybody came.
I had to get the fly off his dick with my mouth.
Oh. The following year, the Mitchell brothers decided to respond to a lot of the publicity and the, tragedy going on about the AIDS epidemic. And of course, San Francisco being like a prime spot for activism and the movement for AIDS prevention, they made one of the first movies that actually starred safe sex. So they incorporated condoms into a sequel to Behind the Green Door.
Yuck. No.
But that continued to be a cause for them.
Yeah,
they were
that's
definitely, partly because of their involvement in the adult industry and partly because they were in San Francisco. It was a huge cause for them. So they definitely continued this work later on as well, not just with their movies, but with some of their donations and activism and stuff like that.
Really like these guys. I hope they don't turn out to be murderers.
I'm really sorry that I'm going to have to crush your dreams.
Did Marilyn Chambers kill these guys?
So in addition to fighting their legal battles in the courts, one of the Mitchell brothers' tactics was to also try and retaliate in more creative ways. One of the most famous things that they did to rebel against the charges against them was to retaliate directly against the mayor, Dianne Feinstein, herself. On the marquee above the O'Farrell Theater, the brothers put Mayor Dianne Feinstein's unlisted personal home phone number under the directions for a good time call.
Love, love, love.
Which is hilarious. It's totally like, I feel part of me is just like, oh, that's fucked up. What a violation of privacy. And then the other part of me is just like, yeah, fuck that.
Yeah,
you know?
no. They specifically say call your local representative.
I mean, really.
So I'm just doing my part as a citizen.
I am a concerned citizen. I'm specifically concerned about the welfare of my own dick.
You're fucking up my stroke time, Miss Feinstein.
In addition to fighting the charges in court, they also, of course, tried to change public perception of them. AIDS became one of their major causes, and they were known for their donations and volunteering with various local AIDS-related charities. As the time went on, they became more dedicated to family and the community. They gave $6,000 so that volunteers could take brunch to the AIDS ward at the San Francisco General Hospital for a year.
I like that it's brunch, not lunch or breakfast or dinner.
It's
like
so much
brunch.
better.
Yeah. Does that come with mimosas?
Right? Exactly. Fuck lunch, fuck breakfast.
Fuck AIDS.
They also donated 20 grand on Earth Day for murals of humpback whales and the rainforest to be made, which, you know, was definitely unheard of at the time.
Nobody cared about.
Nobody cares about the Earth. Yeah. Fuck the Earth.
Do they now?
I don't know. I'm pretty sure going green is all about weeds, so I don't know.
Isn't Earth Day like 420 or something weird like that? I don't know. I'm making shit up.
I don't know.
Fake news.
They also bought their mother, Georgia May Mitchell, a $130,000 home near Sacramento, and they also cut her into 10% of their business, so she was making a profit along with them.
Mama getting that fuck money too.
Right?
Yes.
So they also tried to portray this image of themselves as really good family men. So Jim chauffeured neighborhood kids around for various activities with his kids, and Artie coached Little League. As loving and giving as they were with their kids and the community, their personal lives were also really troubled. There was a lot of rumors about them being in abusive relationships with numerous women. There was, of course, talks of alcoholism and of drug addiction. Jim was divorced twice and had a tumultuous relationship with Lisa Thatcher, who was a porn star and a stripper at O'Farrell's.
They're just binging on weed, fucking doped out.
Living the life, honestly.
I'm just so strung out on weed, man.
I know, right?
Gotta make these fuck films.
Jim and Adrienne Mitchell were married in 1971, but separated after only 3 years of marriage in 1974. In the divorce, Jim was extremely cruel and fought mercilessly. At a deposition, Adrienne broke down crying and said, "He wins. He warned me. He said, Adrienne, if you don't take my offer, I'm going to make it so miserable for you. And he wins. He's stronger. He always wanted to be stronger. He wins. I want my life back."
She put up with 3 years of that shit? That's like, you're like, only 3 years. I'm like, that's a long fucking time.
It's a long time to be that fucking miserable.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they were fighting that badly and, you know, yeah, if shit was that bad, of course. This was, of course, the side of Jim that a lot of people didn't talk about. He was a really driven businessman, but the flip side was that he could be really calculated and heartless with people that were close to him if they were on his bad side. Jim remarried and had 4 children with his second wife, Mary Jane. They were married for 7 years until 1986. The second divorce was more civil. Practice makes perfect, I guess. And Mary Jane would vouch for Jim in various court cases years later. So it seemed like they had a pretty good separation and they remained friends. The brothers' wives often said that the problem wasn't other women, that it was if you married one brother, it was like you married both of them. And the business always got in the way. You look so excited.
2 for the price of 1, man. I'm down.
2's bad if it's like a total nightmare, if they're assholes. But I mean, you know, if they're cool, yeah, 2 of you.
Yeah, if you're trying to make a BLT sandwich and I'm the L, I mean, sounds perfect.
Jim's brother Artie had 3 children with his first wife, Meredith. Meredith attended law school at her husband's expense, and when she graduated, she represented the Mitchell brothers in a lot of their court cases. Eventually, Jim had a falling out with his sister-in-law after they had a really heated disagreement. Meredith felt like Jim's children had bad manners, and they got in an argument about it while the families were on vacation together. Jim was extremely upset and decided to fire Meredith as their lawyer. Like, you're getting the family discount. You can't turn up your nose at that.
Go ahead and pay full price. I don't mind.
In 1976, Artie and Meredith broke up, and Artie began sleeping in his office at the theater. While he was at the theater, an employee skipped town with several $100,000 of the Mitchells' money. Jim was furious with Artie, and he blamed him for the whole loss.
Yeah, where's the safe?
I mean, what? Really, yeah. But that's the thing. I think that they really did have issues with some of their employees being their old-time friends. So everybody had access and things would disappear. I don't think that was the only time. I think that was the worst one, though. Yeah. After Meredith, Artie remarried a woman named Karen, and the couple had 3 more kids, but they divorced in 1983. Their separation was a complete nightmare. There was fighting over the kids and disagreements about money and the whole thing. Karen got a restraining order requiring that Artie not drink around the kids. I don't think that's too much to ask. Like, hey, don't raise our kids while you're drunk. Thanks. Artie claimed that she beat the kids, and she said that he ate mushrooms and shot heroin. So they were going back and forth. Who knows what's actually true in all of that? I think that Artie definitely drank and used drugs, but it's probably not true that she beat the kids, you know? And I don't know how much of the drug use was taking place in front of them. In court documents, Karen claimed that Artie bragged about paying off judges and that he once arranged for her to be raped as punishment.
Whoa.
Yes.
I love that all this stuff is kind of cool until you guys break up. Like, you knew he was shooting up and doing fucking mushrooms, but right. Now it's a problem. Now
when we partied together, it was totally fine.
Totally good. I mean, that one time we did mushrooms together, don't bring that up. But like,
but everything except for that one time.
Yeah. What
happens in the woods stays in the woods. That's the rule of mushrooms.
Except for a murder.
Well, yeah. Karen also said that Artie once tried to strangle her in front of the children. I don't know how much of all of that is true. I'm sure some of it's exaggerated on each side. Mm-hmm. I don't really know. But needless to say, it was a fucked up divorce. And unfortunately, the kids were put in the middle of it, which is always the most disappointing part. Artie, of course, had a lot of problems with drugs and alcohol, so we know at least some of her allegations were true. Artie once drove his 8-year-old son Caleb to the Kaiser Hospital emergency room, where he insisted that his son's finger was injured. A nurse informed Artie that there was nothing wrong with Caleb's finger, but he was insistent.
That's a toe.
So Artie threw a fit in the emergency room and demanded that they treat his son while throwing $100 bills around at the staff.
Fine, I'll fucking take your son in the back. Yeah,
put a Band-Aid on that boo-boo.
Yeah, come on, kid, let's get away from this crazy guy. There's lollipops in the bag.
Right? So the nurse, of course, called the cops. And they observed Artie was super drunk, so they arrested him for causing a disturbance. In his report, the police officer noted that Mitchell was a danger to his son and, quote, too drunk to care for himself. In 1990, Artie had been caught in a riptide off the beach, and Jim had paddled out to help him. He was trying to pull him out of the water, but neither one of them could get out, so a rescue squad had to be called out to get them safely to shore.
They probably went against the current. You're supposed to go sideways.
See? They need an ocean pro like you.
That's probably the most terrifying part of this episode so far. No
I know,
joke.
riptides are scary.
Fucking awful. Hate them.
So I don't know. When I first read that story, I was like, okay, maybe this is just another case of Artie being drunk and out in the world and being a danger, you know? But I do think that whether he was drunk or not, he probably would have been in that scenario if he was in the water. It's a riptide, you know? The brothers were thankful that the rescuers were there to help them, so they gave the squad members a lifetime pass to the O'Farrell Theater.
That was a good day at work. You never get a lifetime fucking pass any other day. Usually you just get a thank you and some like water in your mouth because they cough on you.
Someone just pees on your leg and you're like, whoa, this wasn't a jellyfish incident. They're like, it's okay. It's my fetish now. So whether alcohol was involved in that particular incident or not, various people said that Artie was kind of spiraling out of control around this time. They recall that around this era, Artie earned the nickname Party Artie, but he really seemed to be more scary than he was fun. Various people recalled that he would lash out at his brother, particularly, of course, because they were inseparable. He got the brunt of it. And oftentimes when they got into fights, Artie would make demands for more money. Friends said that Artie's life degenerated into a haze of alcohol and drug abuse. He became really paranoid, and loved ones became freaked out that he began carrying a gun with him everywhere he went.
They already had an arsenal at the fucking...
Right. They already had guns, but now he basically had one on his person. And he would get drunk and kind of pull it out.
Oh,
and
no.
Yeah, it was not good.
Party Artie's at it again.
Yeah.
At least he wasn't farty Artie. I'd
rather see a gun than some flatulence.
Exactly. Agreed.
So when he started degenerating into partying, he also would have trouble running the business. One of the things that would happen was that Artie would try and pay various people and sign checks, and they would get rejected because his signature was so fucked up. It didn't even look like him. It looked like a forgery. So at this point, one of the problems was that his issues were clearly affecting the business. Customers were freaked out by Artie's behavior, and oftentimes regulars would leave when they would see that Artie was there. By 1991, Artie had been banned from his own theater after he fired a shot into the ceiling while he was drunk.
Okay, but all he's got to do is sit at home and collect checks, right? And not write drunk signatures.
Just stay home. Like, you own a business. You don't even have to be there.
I would stay home. Like, what?
And you probably networked, so you could just invite strippers over.
Totally.
I mean, why leave the house when they could just come to you?
Yeah, and your kids are already taken away, so you really have the bachelor pad. You got weed and shrooms.
Everything you need.
Yeah.
Beyond the business, Artie had also threatened his ex-wife, Jim's girlfriend, and even their own mother. Artie even called up Jim one day and began taunting him and calling him a washed-up old man. That's just an observation. Can't blame him.
Yeah, so. I can still go to our cinema, our theater.
And jerk off to my heart's content.
Exactly.
So Artie's girlfriend called up Jim and told him that she was really worried about Artie, but she says that Jim kind of brushed it off. His ex-wife Karen says that she also made a similar call to Jim and got a similar response. On February 27th, Artie's girlfriend heard Artie talking on the phone to their mother. Their mother was trying to confront Artie about his drinking, and Artie said, "I'm not the only son with a problem. If Jim stops smoking, I'll stop drinking."
Wow.
Just such intense denial and deflecting.
That's so, yeah, it's just addiction to tea. Well, he does that too.
Exactly.
Yeah, I hate that.
You
How
never want to look
childish.
at yourself.
Yeah.
There were some whispers around this time that Artie might go to Baja or stay in Mexico for a year, because that was one way that he could possibly clean up his act and get sober, by just relocating entirely. But that never happened. By February 1991, Jim was pretty much at his wit's end with Artie's behavior. And he was really concerned about how it was affecting the business. Even though he was no longer allowed at the theater, he felt like these constant requests for more money and carrying a pistol, possibly causing more problems, would just continue to cost Jim and the business more money.
Yeah, it wouldn't ruin his brother's life. It would only hurt the business. And, like,
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just kind of...
I get it, but it's your brother. Like, it's not your business partner. It's your brother. You should...
At the end of the day, it's just about family.
If your brother's thinking about going to Mexico in the 90s to get sober, maybe you should hop in.
Yep.
But what do I know?
So Jim decided to go over to Artie's house around 10 o'clock on February 27th, 1991, to confront him. Jim says that he wanted to talk some sense into Artie, and he wanted to convince him to go to rehab. He also wanted to take Artie's guns away and kind of show him some tough love and put his foot down.
There we go. That's exactly what I needed. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Jim, unfortunately, decided to bring a few guns with him because he was concerned that Artie was also armed.
He brought guns to take guns away. Did you realize?
He brought guns to a gunfight.
That's true, actually.
Jim drove to Artie's house and parked his car 3 blocks away. Before going into the house, Jim slashed the tires on Artie's car. I want to believe that he was just bringing guns for protection, but those types of things definitely suggest otherwise. Yes.
He's already in a rage. He's already in a drunken state. Why would you cut his tires? I just don't.
He claims just so that he could leave or whatever, but it just kind of doesn't make sense. It all screams premeditation. So Jim kicked in the door and walked towards the hallway that led to Artie's bedroom. When Jim kicked the door down, Artie's girlfriend Julie ran to hide in the closet, and she called 911. Jim claims that he saw his brother charging toward him with a weapon. Jim also claims that he shot 1 bullet into the ceiling as a warning shot and then doesn't remember anything else. However, forensics paint a different picture.
Yeah, who's the drunk one?
Right, yeah. 2 shots were fired down the hall into the closed bedroom door. So we know the first shots fired were not because he saw a weapon. The door was still closed.
Yeah, he couldn't have been coming right for you.
Right. Then Artie opened the door, came out of the bedroom, and Jim fired a shot right next to Artie into the door frame of the bedroom door. Artie walked out into the hall towards Jim, and Jim fired a shot into Artie's stomach, and the bullet exited through his back. Artie then ducked into the bathroom that was a doorway on his side, and he was trying to escape the gunfire.
I'm going to die when I'm going outside.
Jim fired a shot through the bathroom wall that hit Artie in the shoulder. Then Jim stopped shooting, and he waited for Artie to come out of the bathroom. Jim got on one knee, and he took aim while he was watching the door intensely. You could hear on the 911 call that 28 seconds pass with him just waiting there. And eventually, Artie poked his head out to check and see if Jim had left. And of course, when Artie peeked his head out to see what was going on, Jim fired a shot that hit Artie directly in the head. It was the last shot, and it was fatal. Jim fled the scene on foot, and an officer responding to the 911 call noticed a man limping down the street. The officer pulled over, and he ordered the man to freeze. Jim ducked behind a car and tugged at his waistband, and the officer observed that the limp was coming from a gun that was tucked in his pants. Since the officer saw that he was trying to pull the gun out of his waistband, the cop said, "Stop or I'll shoot." And Jim was about to pull the gun on the officer, but then a backup officer arrived, and Jim knew he really couldn't have a chance of fleeing, so he surrendered. Jim was taken into custody and charged with his brother's murder. Forensics showed that Jim had fired a total of 8 shots, including 3 that actually hit Artie in the abdomen, the shoulder, and the right eye. Although Jim claimed that Artie had a gun, the only object found near Artie's body was a beer bottle. Art's blood alcohol level was a 0.25, which I guess is almost 3 times the legal limit.
Yeah, that's pretty drunk, dude. I got a DUI with 0.16.
The technical term for that is pretty drunk.
Gosh, wasted.
Many people were, of course, really sad to hear of Artie's passing, but everyone pretty much said they weren't shocked. They had always expected that he would die young. People were, however, really shocked that Artie had been killed by Jim. You know, Jim had always been the really responsible and protective one, so since he held everything together, they really didn't think that he would lash out at him like this, you know? Of course, Jim's trial was a media circus. There were porn stars, exotic dancers, there were celebrities, and a ton of coverage. Although the Mitchell brothers had been longtime targets of the vice squads like throughout the 70s and 80s, by this time they were backing the mayor, they were, you know, doing charity events, they were donating, and they were friends with a lot of the local police officers.
They were more intertwined into the community rather than being, you know,
exactly.
Ostracized.
Yeah. So the defense during the trial painted this picture of a distraught man who was really trying to save his brother's life. Jim cried while he was on the stand. He said that he wished it was him instead of his brother.
You tried to save his life by shooting him 3 times?
Yeah.
How does that?
And parking 3 blocks away, trying to evade the police, slashing your brother's tires. I just don't believe it for a second.
Nah. Mm-mm.
During the trial, the court allowed the prosecution to show computer animation reenactment of the murder. This was the first use of 3D computer animation in a criminal trial. And
sorry.
It set a precedent for future trials.
How long did that take with dial-up back then? If they had to use any internet.
I know, it's pretty crude nowadays. Like, if you see the footage, it's just kind of like, it's pretty bad.
Trailblazing, though. That's good.
Yes, again, trailblazing. The computer animation used audio from the 911 call to kind of time out the bullet impacts and the, of course, forensics of the bullet trajectory to really put together this whole animation of the timeline and which shots were fired when. After a highly publicized trial, the jury deliberated for 2 days. Instead of simply going to either extreme in their verdict, they took the middle approach. They rejected the murder charge and instead found him guilty of voluntary manslaughter. So this means that they rejected the prosecution's idea that the killing was premeditated, but they also didn't really concede to the defense's assertion that the crime was self-defense. The jury also found Jim guilty of 2 lesser counts of brandishing a firearm and discharging a firearm in a house.
I mean, I guess they do try and slip in those little things,
right,
which
they
is
try
good.
and get these little, but it's like, it's not the main, I don't know, brandishing a firearm. I don't know. Before Jim's sentencing, numerous people spoke on his behalf, including Mayor Frank Jordan, Sheriff Michael Hennessy, and former police chief Richard Hongasito.
Oh, amazing name. Michael Hennessy. Your name is Mr. Hennessy? Mr. Sheriff Hennessy?
In the end, Jim Mitchell was sentenced to 6 years in prison.
Not enough.
Yeah, especially because after he served 3 years in San Quentin, Jim was released in 1997, and he returned to run the O'Farrell Theater. Yep.
Dang.
Yeah, so he continued to run it for years, and then he retired and lived quietly on his ranch. Jim established the, quote, Artie Fund to collect money for local drug rehab centers.
No.
And for the Surf Rescue Squad, the division of the San Francisco Fire Department that had saved them from the riptide. Artie's children have denounced the fund, claiming that it's intended to downplay the severity of Artie's murder. On their website, his children describe their father's murder as premeditated and motivated by greed and jealousy. They claim that the depictions of Artie are, basically blown out of proportion.
Like he just fucked up. Like he was fucked up, but he didn't shoot.
Right. He wasn't a murderer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jim Mitchell died of a heart attack at his ranch on July 12th, 2007. And the kids took over the family business. I also have some additional information about how the murders, I think, impacted the rest of the family. In 2011, Jim's son James was convicted of murdering the mother of his child with a baseball bat.
What? With a baseball bat?
Yes.
Wow.
According to prosecutors, in July 2009, James grabbed his young daughter Samantha from the arms of her mother, Danielle Keller, outside their Novato home. Then he clubbed Keller to death with a baseball bat in front of their daughter.
Did he claim self-defense too?
Right?
Oh, seriously?
Fuck.
And did he get 3 years?
Nope. 29-year-old James was sentenced to 35 years in prison. In May 2014, Artie's daughter Jasmine was arrested for her alleged participation in an identity theft ring. Pales in comparison, I guess. We're desensitized by all this murder.
Yeah.
33-year-old Jasmine rammed a police car and fled as officers tried to arrest her in San Pablo on April 29th, 2014. Mitchell was on the run for 9 days before she was finally arrested in San Francisco. She's accused of leading a major identity theft operation that affected thousands of people. Officers found meth, fake credit cards, and cash after she was arrested.
Why is it always meth tied to identity theft?
It's always meth.
Oh,
always.
Like peanut butter and jelly.
So you basically do meth and then you're like, I want to steal someone's life.
Yeah. Or you start stealing people's identity and you're like, I want to do meth.
We don't know. It's a real chicken and egg situation. So the brothers became the subject of a few books, a couple movies, and I haven't seen any of them, so I can't recommend them, but I definitely want to check them out. And that's the story of the Mitchell brothers and their family members.
Oh, man.
Fucked up family.
I thought my family was fucked.
Yeah. One of the daughters, Jim's daughter, Meta, is now the O'Farrell's general manager.
Fuck yeah. We got to check that place out and go check
one out. I know. We need a road trip for sure.
Yeah.
A jerk-off road trip.
Let's do it.
I'd really like to get in a car with you and then go to a destination where I just jerk off on you.
Oh my God. Do you want to like jerk off in Solvang? Get real Dutch or Danish, whatever it is.
I love Solvang.
I've never been out. I've seen a magnet from there. It looks weird.
It's so cute.
Can you jerk me off in San Diego? Or can we jerk it in San Diego?
We can jerk everywhere, Kelly. I would love nothing more.
I missed you so much. That was awesome.
Thanks, man. That was a crazy case.
Yeah, don't have brothers.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Definitely don't.
You've never gotten anything good for your brothers,
no.
you know?
Yeah.
That's been nothing but bad news.
Yeah, and bad nicknames.
Smelly Kelly.
Jelly Belly. Aww.
Oh, no.
It's better than Clogger.
Yeah. Could be worse.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be pretty much it for this week. Vice
good.
Part 2.
I love Vice. So good.
I know, right? Definitely a second favorite to all the rock and roll ones.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And Queensland.
Oh, man.
We've had some good times.
I forgot about Queensland.
Yeah. We can't forget about Australia.
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry, Queensland. So before we get going, I guess we should just thank our Patreon supporters.
Jess, Kate, Robin, Alyssa,
Michelle, Nicole, Diane.
Yeah, thanks, guys. You the best.
If you haven't already, please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Don't forget to check out the links in our show notes. We've got our Patreon, of course. We've got our Threadless if you want some merch. And we've got the links to all our social media and our research material and resources for a bunch of suicide prevention, CPS, domestic violence, any mental health resources. We've got a bunch of links in there. So check out our show notes if you want any follow-up stuff. Cool?
How about the voting?
Oh, yeah, I forgot. Yeah, no, I was trying to get us voted onto a BuzzFeed list for underrated podcasts. So I have posted that link on our social media. It's also in the bio of our Instagram and stuff. So if you want to help us out and vote for us, there's a link over there where you can leave a comment, or there is a email address that you can email and vote for us. And we would really appreciate that because I'd love to get our name more out there.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I think we're underrated.
I think we're overrated.
I tend to agree with you. Yeah.
Jokes, please, God, or whoever's out there.
So if you feel like voting for us, and also, there's a ton of really great indie podcasts out there, like a ton of not only us, but different shows that are just doing this on their own. And if you want to vote at all, we would encourage you guys to just do that for any show that you think is awesome, because we'd love to just expand podcasting in general. I think it's great if you vote for us, but also there's a ton of shows that I love that I think are underrated.
Yes.
So I'm casting my vote as well.
You know how hard it's been to not break the system? It's like my Amazon, my Netflix, and my fucking Lyft and Uber. I want to make 10 accounts and just blow shit up. Like I can figure out how to get us 100,000 votes, but should I?
I know, right? We're trying to play this right. Don't make us try and vote for ourselves.
We're being so legit about it. Like
we're trying. But we're getting the shakes. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. BuzzFeed, any of the links in our show notes and stuff. I think this week I'll probably put the link for the BuzzFeed in there.
Cool.
If you want to vote for us.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. We'll see you next week for Vice Part 3.
Yeah, it's freezing. Can we please true crime, snuggle, and chill?
Oh, man. Keep warm, true crime, and chill. Bye.
Bye.
What's up, you guys, and welcome
to the Ghoul Gang.
Hey, we're two sisters from Chicago with a love for all things spooky.
We are a comedy podcast, and we're all about horror, haunts, and hoaxes.
So, what can you expect to hear from us, Grace?
Oh, the usual haunted dolls, colonial slaughter, cryptids, ghost horses, Ouija boards.
Ooh, hard pass.
Corpse shoots, the standard. We also take listener stories and personal accounts of the paranormal things that happen in your lives, which is my personal favorite part of the podcast.
Totally. My personal favorite part of the podcast is the horror film and TV series reviews and discussions we have. We keep you up to date on all of the most recent horror releases, as well as revisit some of our favorite horror classics.
So, if you share our love for the macabre, come hang with us and join the Ghoul Gang.
Hey, and also don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes, and you can check us out on our website, theghoulgangpodcast.com. Bye.
Bye.
Well, hello, my friends. This is CK from the Mirths and Monsters podcast, proud partner of the Odd Audio Network. Join me, my companion Finn, and my occasionally satanically possessed cat Ray, as we investigate the real truths behind some of the most wonderful creatures you can imagine. Are trolls really that thick? Or is it just bad press? Are leprechauns really drunken bums? Sort of. But there's a lot more to find out. All you need to do is tune in to Mirths and Monsters podcast with me and Finn.